It's a nine-chord banger. Dr. Ross dropping knowledge to the masses. Man, you now tuned in to purpose and practice. Ayy, yeah, purpose and practice. Keep your mental sharp, learn all the tactics. Dr. Ross dropping knowledge to the masses. Man, you now tuned in to purpose and practice. Ayy, yeah, purpose and practice. Podcast game, ayy, he got it mastered. It's encore.
Oh, what up, everybody? We are back for another episode, Purpose and Practice podcast with your host, Dr. Rawls Dill. We are back with another special episode of the podcast. Before, and hopefully, shout out, hopefully everybody's feeling well, everybody's safe, everybody's healthy. I know times is crazy right now, so that's first and foremost. We wish you all good health. That's mentally, spiritually, emotionally, physically, like those things are important. So we definitely wish you some good health. Before we get into tonight's show, I wanted to start off with just a salute, man. Like we enter Women's History Month, and just straight up, historically, women, have played a large role in my life. From growing up, being raised by grandma, mom, aunties, big cousins, it's my sister out there. Shout out to her. Like coming up, women were very, very important in our neighborhood. And I remember, a couple of years ago, I had penned a story and, I named women the guardians of the community because they really, really looked over us growing up, in sometimes tough and difficult situations. And they never looked for rewards or, any pats on the back. It was just part of the work. And with that said, I was fortunate enough growing up in elementary school where I was passed off to an elementary school where I had a Black female teacher, my first Black teacher, shout out to Dr. Roy, was Mrs. Roy when I was there, but Dr. Roy over at Leonard Conroe, and she was my 5th grade teacher. And when I tell you, like, she had one of the probably most influential teacher in my life, in that story that I talked about, it talks about the transition from me leaving my community growing up and black women, pouring their souls into me and then passing me off to elementary school where I had a Miss Roy. There was also a Miss Harris there. Unfortunately, I didn't have Miss Harris in 4th grade, but she was another Black teacher. And not until, believe it or not until I got to high school did I have another Black teacher, and shout out to Ms. Minor, who is still on social media. If she's listening in, Ms. Minor, I'm trying to get you on the show. I want you on the show. We need those stories. We need to keep those histories alive. And with that said, keeping in the spirit of education, last week we had Sade on the show, elementary school teacher, who I had a chance to call a colleague at one time. And now, this week we have another special guest, another woman in education who is just putting it down, has been putting it down, putting mad work in. I was teasing. I was like, yo, you was on tech in this ed tech before it was like a hashtag at ed tech. I had the opportunity also to be colleagues with Carrie when I was in Asbury Park, and huge shout out to Asbury Park, Blue Bishops. And she was doing great things then and innovative then and still innovative. So without me, I'm going to shut up because we're going to hear enough about Carrie tonight. So, and we'll stop with the bio. Carrie, how are you feeling? And welcome to the show.
I'm feeling great. Thank you for having me. I'm so excited.
Listen, we are excited to have you. It's important to hear these stories. I think that sometimes we take ordinary greatness for granted in some of the spaces and the things that we're doing out in the community. It needs to be showcased, and you've been putting it down. I don't watch you just like grow in this world, especially in this ed tech world. Not to limit you to that, but you have really created a space and you're putting out some great content and doing some great things for folks. So I was like, we got to get Carrie, we got to get Carrie on the show. So I am happy that you are here with us. With that said, one of the things, Carrie, that I like to do, and we talked about this a little bit, is I'm really interested in background stories. One of the themes of our podcast, as a matter of fact, the Sankofa bird that you see above our heads, that's about going back and bringing forward, and those are the things that I love to do. Is like go back, grab these stories, grab these folks in our history, these people who are important to our memory historically, and bring it forward. In this case, I ask my guests to like go back and tell stories about growing up, because I think that those stories are paramount. So if you don't mind, just sharing some of your stories growing up, where you grew up, what growing up was like, what school was like for you, as a student, as we progress into your story to where you are now.
All right. So it's like super interesting to, I think a lot of people don't really know completely, like they just assume that, I've been in the area forever, but really I was born in Minneapolis, Minnesota.
Wow.
So my parents met in the Army. My dad was from Minnesota. My mom is from New Jersey. And they met and got married in the Army, and we lived in Minnesota. And when my parents divorced, we moved back to New Jersey. So I've been here since I was 4. So I went through the Tinton Falls School District. Shout out to the Fruit Bowl.
Hold on. What street were you? What street were you at Fruit Bowl?
Peach.
Okay, Peach Street.
And I'm on Peach now. It's funny how I end up buying a house down the street from where I grew up. So, shout out to the Fruit Bowl. And basically how my life, like during the year, I would be in New Jersey, but the summers I would spend in Minnesota. So my twin sister and my brother, we would be shipped out to Minnesota for the summer. And basically how I grew up is, I'm biracial. So, we have the Black family here in New Jersey, and then I would be shipped to my dad, who's Irish and Swedish. So, we would spend most of the time with my Swedish grandmother and Irish grandfather while he was working. So it kind of like lends to like, who Carrie is and how she kind of grew up. And like, I grew up with, single mom, and she worked really, really hard. Shout out to Aini, because Ines Hennessy holds it down in these streets in the area. Everyone knows her. So it's kind of like one of those things like, where we didn't have much growing up here. My mom was, worked hard, single mom, but we were on Section 8, like, so it was rough. But then, the other side of it, when we would go to Minnesota, my grandparents would take care of most things. We would go on vacations within vacations. So I could say that I visited Mount Rushmore. How many, Black kids can say that they went to those kind of things? When I lived in Minnesota, we went and visited my babysitter who lived on an Indian reservation. So I had these kind of things growing up that kind of molded me into who I am. So like, as far as a student, like my mom was very strict when it came to education, and she did not play. And, we would be the one, if we got like a bad grade, we would be scared to come home because we would be on punishment, like until like forever. So yeah, like it was like never living up. So, so it was kind of the thing. My mom like pushed us, and we were, always, really good students, very good in school. Those were the days that, if you got in trouble by everyone when you got home.
Yes.
And, where I lived, my grandparents lived down the street. My aunt was around the corner. My uncle was around the other corner. So you were getting it from everyone. So it kind of like really kept us on the straight and narrow. And because my family was known in the area, everyone knew who we were. Yeah. So wherever we went, even if we were supposed to be there, someone was giving a call to my grandparents saying, it's, Carrie and Heather supposed to be over here, because I have a twin sister. So, we're always together. So that's basically, how I grew up in Tinton Falls, with the crew, a whole bunch of cousins, my sister and I, and we have one other girl cousin, the rest are boys. So, it wasn't, tomboy kind of rough kind of upbringing, which makes me who I am today.
So how, let me ask you a question though, like, going back and forth. Um, wh- what was that? Did you now school? You only did school in Tinton Falls, as far as you guys.
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
so like it was like really for summers and sometimes break, winter
Summers
break.
and like every other holiday.
Okay, all right. So what was that like? Did you create friends? You know, like,
So
or was
in
it
Minnesota,
when you went to
or
visit?
like
Yeah, in Minnesota. Did you create a lot of like other friends, and how did that? How
sure.
was that?
Right. So, like, we lived in Minneapolis. So, which is basically when people think of Minnesota, they think of like Midwestern kind of farmy kind of people. But
Uh-huh.
we were in Minneapolis in the
The
city.
city. Yeah.
So, we would play with the kids who were on the block, basically, at those times, you went outside and you didn't
Yeah.
come
Play.
in
Yeah. Yeah.
until that was just kind of how it was. So we kind of played with, everyone around the area. So they would know because my grandparents would tell them because my grandparents had a duplex. So
Okay.
they lived upstairs and my dad lived downstairs. So like everyone would know kind of like when we were coming.
Okay. So did you like, was there ever a time where, and I've lived in, like, there was a time where I was living in between, not the same as Minnesota, in New Jersey, but I was living in Asbury Park, and then I was going back and forth between where my parents lived and then where my grandmother, staying with my grandma. So did you ever have that time where it was like you rather have been in Minnesota as opposed to being out here in New Jersey? Like, did you ever have that battle of like, I don't want to go back? I don't like, was that a thing for you?
Yeah, I think eventually because as I kind of got older, and a little bit wise about what was going on between my parents and like the
Hmm. Hmm.
struggle of like my dad was a Vietnam vet, so
Okay.
he had some mental illness.
Yeah.
He was an alcoholic, so
Mhm.
it kind of like when you as you get older you kind of
Yeah.
understand like kind of like you pick up on things more than you
Mhm.
would when you were younger. So, my life in Minnesota was absolutely much easier because,
Mhm.
the finances were there where, my mom, worked, like she worked at Fort Monmouth, but she always, had a kind of like another job to
Yeah.
kind of, pick up the slack to make sure that, we had, you
The
know,
things you need.
our needs met.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
it came to a point like when I was a freshman in high school where I was like, I'm good. Like, we wanted to work so, we could keep up and not to keep up, but when you're a
Yeah.
teenager, you're
Yeah.
selfish.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
you want the cross colors
Yeah.
outfits,
Oh, you
and
took
you
it
want
all the
those
way
things.
back.
You want those things. Like I specifically remember
Yeah.
those things,
Yeah.
like it's funny now how all the retro sneakers and stuff back. I was like, I couldn't get it then,
I
but I
know.
could get them now.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
so it's like you want to work so you can like, look fly. So,
Word.
it just came to the point where like, I'm good. And then we kind of stopped, me and my sister stopped going, but my brother continued to go where I was
Continue to
just
go
like,
out.
I'm good.
So, you have this transition, you come back to New Jersey, you started in elementary school, I'm assuming, in Tinton
Yes,
Falls.
kindergarten.
So what elementary did you go to?
So I went to Atchison,
Shout out to,
was when I
speaking of black women, it like, yo, there you go.
the school before time, before it was, let's name a school after a black
Yes,
lady to show them that we care.
yes.
This was like back before it was even like in style to name a school, after a
Word,
black,
word,
teacher. So
word.
yeah, so K-2, I went to Atchison, and then 3 to 5, I was at Swim and River, went over to
Okay.
the middle school 6 to 8, and then went over to Monmouth Regional
For
nine
high
to
school.
12.
So
So
yeah, my kids are on the same, we're in Tinton Falls. My kids on that same path, that same pathway you just named. They're on it. Um,
and
I,
so are mine.
yeah, so there you go. But here, what I want to ask you though, um, when we go to Atchison, right? And this is something I don't know if you remember, but my kids, when they were in that school, they didn't learn anything about Mahalia Atchison. And I wanted to know, do you recall being taught anything while you were there? And I know we're going way back,
Right.
but was there any awareness?
So you know what's funny is my kindergarten and 5-year-old Carrie, she
Uh-huh.
came to visit us in kindergarten. She was still alive when I was in kindergarten.
Mm.
So I specifically remember, I don't know what she said. Like I can't
Yeah, yeah.
remember like what,
Wow.
like I just remember she came and I remember her visiting and I remember talking with
Wow.
her. Like I,
Wow.
like, I'm like, that's the lady in the picture. Like she looks like
Yes.
that, like
Yes.
I remember those things. And I think that's important. And a lot of people don't want to talk about that.
Mhm.
Representation matters. It's important
Yes.
to see those
Word.
things.
Yes.
It is.
Yes, I totally, totally agree. And I remember pointing the mural because there's a mural in the school, and I remember pointing it out to my kids to bring awareness to them. That representation, it is so critical. It is so critical. And it's not a token thing. It's not like this surface thing
No.
like, oh, we just need to have diverse racial cultural folks in our institutions and our organizations, but we also need to include them and include their perspective and include their vision, because it really opens up the entire world. Like it just opens up everything. So I am a firm believer in that as well, and that's why I started off the show. Like sometimes like I teach graduate class, I teach undergraduate class, and sometimes I would ask some of the students like, when was the first time you had a black or brown teacher? Like when was the first time? And sometimes folks are getting all the way to be in master's programs without ever experiencing that,
Which
you
is a
know?
shame. I mean, honestly, I could speak to like my first Black teacher in Tinton Falls was Mrs.
Wow.
Ham in 6th grade, who just passed away. Rest in peace to
Mm,
Mrs. Ham. But that was my first Black teacher in the whole entire school district, and my mom was really a proponent and really like went to board meetings to like
mhm.
fight for like people of color teachers because
True.
they needed to be represented in the school district.
True, true. So important. Miss Perrier, shout out to you, Miss Perrier. She said
Hey, Miss Perry.
she had her in second grade. That's what's up. And another though, another black female teacher out there, historically putting work in Asbury Public Schools. Another one of my former colleagues. Shout out to you. So you go through middle school, get to high school. What was any extracurricular, like, because I know like right now you're crazy in the tech world. Did you have any extracurricular activities during this time? Any hobbies, like anything, like what kept you busy outside of school?
All right. So this was like a little, because I'm new to the high school and I'm at the high school now in Asbury Park. Shout out to my AP people
Word.
represent. So I played the cello from
Okay.
4th grade up until like my junior year of high school, and was like in the New Jersey State Youth Orchestra. Like for
Wow.
me, it was always kind of pushing boundaries, like things that weren't necessarily like for us.
Mhm,
You
mhm,
know, our family kind of was like those people, like, you know what? I'm not going to play the trumpet.
mhm,
I'm going to play the violin just
mm.
because, so I started off playing violin. So I played the cello and was in the New Jersey State Youth Orchestra up into high school. And then I also I was a thrower. I started in middle school. So I was on the
Oh,
track team
okay.
for indoor and outdoor track. I threw shot
Okay.
put, discus, and javelin. And yeah, I was pretty good. I just got to, I mean, I wasn't good, like to get a college scholarship,
Uh-huh. But you
but
did
I
your
made
thing.
it to like the state finals. So that kept
Okay.
me pretty busy. And I was like in different little like different clubs and stuff like
Yeah,
that. But
yeah.
I like to work, as I like to say, I like to make that money. So I was also doing that.
Doing that job. So you talked about pushing boundaries, and it sounds like that was something that was kind of like a focus of your family, because you talked about, it was kind of coming from your family. Like like explain that a little bit more. Like what were conversations like? Like how did that happen?
So in my family, so those who are familiar with the Red Bank, Tinton Falls, Eatontown family, like my mom is from the Rock family, and
Okay.
my grandfather, so my grandmother's a Brock and my grandfather's a Chameau. So the Chameau family is very big in the area. My mom is like one of 7, but our family is very militant in a way where they're always like, you know, checking people, you know, like this is what it's going to be, you know, this is how it is, fighting the good fight. Like there's always a fight in the Chameau family. And so it's kind of just inbred in us to kind of like fight for the underdog, even if it's going to get us in trouble. Like we tend to just, you know, so it's kind of just innate within how we were raised, and, you know, looking out for the people who can't look out for themselves.
Word. That, you know, I'm happy that you just said that, because those community attributes, you know, those family attributes are very important. And sometimes when folks are too busy trying to survive, they don't have the energy or sometimes the time to fight those good fights, like you just said. I was just having a conversation about that, and I was like, yo, you know, because we're quick to say, you know, oh man, they sleeping, you know, they need to be woke. But sometimes it's just people are caught up in the everyday struggle of survival. So even if they want to fight certain fights and advocate for certain things, or, you know, speak and voice for the voiceless, they can't, because they're caught up in this whirlwind. So you saying that, you know, I think is really, really important. And sometimes, you know, that good fight, you know, sometimes people try to avoid it, but I'm happy that you kind of came up in the family like, listen, if you see something that needs to be spoken to or checked, check it, you know, check it. But see, it also seems like it went into other facets. Like, cause you mentioned that on the strength of playing a cello, like, cause that was a different thing, you know what I'm saying? Right. So it kind of allowed you to even step out of boundaries and step beyond, you know, circles or boxes that you may have been placed in. So, you know, I think that those things kind of permeate, and they hit us in many different ways, you know, when we have that kind of upbringing. So with that said, you know, you're in high school, you're athletic, you know, making it to a state finals. Not too many people could say that, especially, you know, in a competitive sport like, you know, being a thrower. You did that winter and spring. You did track.
I did. You do? I had a quick stint as a flag twirler for 2 years, you know, on the color guard, and then I gave that up. So. Yeah, it's just, to me, like whatever, like no one else was doing, I was just going to try it.
You was trying to do it. You was trying to do it. So you come out of Monmouth Regional.
Yes.
And do you go off right to college? Like, what do you do, a gap year? How's that?
Right. So I end up, I went to Hampton University.
Oh, wow. Shout out to the HBCUs.
Yes. Okay. So that's where I started. And I went as, you know, when I was in, sorry, I'm like, let me fix my hair and like the other way. So I was in a journalism class and kind of fell in love with it. Okay. So, sorry, I'm a little distracted. That's going to bother me. So I'm just going to fix that for all you. I got to do what you got to do. I got to get it right. There we go. There we go. So, so I fell in love with journalism. So when I went to Hampton, I was a mass media major. I wasn't an education major. So I was going to be like the next Angie Martinez on Hot 97. That was going to be me. Cause you know, I was just that dope. I believe that inside of me, for real. I believed it. So when I went to Hampton, I got a work study job. Like my work study job was working in the mass media department. Everyone wanted that job because everyone wanted that favor, because in order to get into the major, you had to take a test in order to get into the major. So everyone kind of was like sucking up and like trying to like, you know, and I was the office assistant in the mass media department. So you couldn't tell me, you know, nothing. So, you know, like when I went to Hampton, you know, basically you're taking your core requirements. You can't, until you matriculate and get accepted into the program, you don't start those courses. So I only stayed for a year because even though I had high hopes of I'm going to HBCU
Mhm.
and, you know, and I couldn't afford to stay at the Hampton University. So, you know, I had some bills and I had to come back home. And I stayed out another year because I had to pay that off.
Oh, wow.
Right. So that's how that.
Wow. So hold
Yeah.
on. Let me go back a little bit, because I was
Mhm.
just having a conversation with someone and we were talking about the importance of HBCUs, right? The first thing I want to ask you is, how did you even know? Because the person I was talking to was like, she's a teacher, and she was saying that, you know what, I always push my kids to apply to HBCUs. She's a high school teacher. So my question to you is like, how did even applying to Hampton become a thing? Like, how did that come about?
So I did have some cousins who did attend Hampton. Shout out to the Fishers. So like my extended family like did go to
Okay.
Hampton, and I honestly like I just remember looking at like I don't know if I went to a college fair or something
Mhm.
just kind of popped up. And I sent away for like the little booklet, like when you used to like there was no
Yes, that was
virtual
back in the
anything.
day. Yes,
Right.
yes,
So
yes.
you sent your little, you know, thing to get the little booklet so you can like, you know, preview it. And I was like, I'm
Right.
going to Hampton. And that was like my sophomore year of high school where I was like, I'm going to Hampton. Like I'm going.
It's happening.
So honestly, like, and I'm starting like when I started to think about like when you were asking me to do this, I was like just kind of like just reflecting on stuff. I'm like, I
Mhm.
just kind of just do things and don't really think too much about doing them. I just kind of do it because I said I'm going to do it. And I didn't apply to any other colleges, only Hampton.
That
That
was
was the only
it.
one I applied for. That was the only one.
Wow. So
And
you went out on the limb then.
yeah, I was like, I'm gonna get accepted. I'm gonna get accepted. Hey KB.
Shout out to
So
Miss Baumgartner.
yes. So that's pretty much, you know, kind of like, and I was going to go there. Now, the funny thing is my husband graduated from Hampton. He's 2 years ahead of me, and everybody thinks that I followed him there. He like copied off of what I wanted to do and just ended up being there before I did. So, you know, then obviously I didn't graduate from there. I had to come back home and pay some bills off to go back to school.
So if you don't mind, I would love to hear, even though you had a short experience, um, because one of the regrets that I have is not applying, even applied to a HBCU, but not going. And and I had older, friends who went, and we would visit. My brother, who I consider my brother, his brother went to Howard, and we would go down and we would visit. And I always kick myself for like, man, I should apply to a HBCU. I should have went to an HBCU. If you don't mind, just even in your short experience there, just kind of, sharing kind of like what that was like.
So it's the craziest thing about how I can kind of explain it. It's like any other college. Like when you think about like the different groups of people, except everyone's pretty much Black or a person of color. So like if you've ever been to the Hampton campus, it's really kind of like you can feel like the history, like when you just set foot on there. Like I'm getting goosebumps thinking about it because it's just like that. It's like you feel the history, like, and you just feel like the people who were there in the past, like, and all that. It's kind of spiritual. If I kind of like could if I'm making quite, I can't put it quite in words.
That makes sense.
Yes.
That makes sense.
So when you get there but it's like once you get there and you kind of get in with like different groups, you realize the different factions, it's like no other kind of like, as I used to call it, like you would have the like super preppy people from like Maryland, like, and like the people like from New York and New Jersey, like literally like I would wear, because at that point everything was baggy. I would have like jerseys and hoodies and jeans and my shell tops. Like that's what I wore to school like every day. And then, you know, my roommate who's from Virginia would be putting makeup on and like dressed to the nines. I'm like, I'm just going to class. I'm not doing all that. So, and then you had like your super granola people, like the hippie black people.
Yes.
Like the dirty backpack clique. You had those people like with the chew sticks, you know, those people.
Yeah.
So it's like the same kind of things like that you would have in like a predominantly white institution, but just everyone's black. But the culture of it and like just learning about your people, because you don't get those things in a regular public school, was what I appreciated most about it. And just going to a homecoming alone is like life changing. It's life changing. Like you have to go. Like if you haven't gone once, you have to go once because it's life changing.
Yes, I could definitely testify to that. And, you know, like that it's a, you know, it's like an energy, you know, and sometimes you can't, like you just said, it's hard to verbalize it, but there's like this energy of, yo, it's this feeling that I can't explain. It feels
it's like
home.
I can be me. And I think that's really I can be me, and I don't have to be other. I don't have to code switch. I can just talk and be me and be who I am.
Yes, that's it. You know, I said home, but that's exactly but that's what home feels like. Is like
it absolutely does feel like that.
We could be ourselves. Shout out Bishop's in the house tonight. Shout out to AP. Shout out to Ms. Baumgartner, principal over at Asbury Park High School, putting that work in, been putting that work in for a minute. You know, someone just commented, Ken, another one of my former colleagues, you know, about it is a shame that, you know, money becomes like this barrier with education. You know,
and it's definitely a thing. And then my mom is a single mom, but you know, even though, like I said, you know, I'm not ashamed to say that we were on a form of Section 8, but she still made too much money in order to like, did I have some financial aid? Sure. Did I qualify for EOF? No, you know, so I'm still paying for loans because I was like, in order for me to be able to do this and to succeed, I was going to take those loans out to do what I had to do.
And, you know, and I don't know, you know, in terms of legacy, I always felt that going to college was important. You know, it was very important to me. And it was at whatever cost it has to come, it's what I'm going to do. And it's the reason why I continued education. One of the things that I was like, man, I never want to miss out on the opportunity or be told no because of education. You know, informal education, should I say. But there's a cost to it. There is literally a cost to it. And it could put you in the poorhouse, you know, you know, real talk. It does. So you come up against that challenge and you go back home, you go back to New Jersey. So
go back to New Jersey with my mom.
Listen, I just want to talk about the psychology of that, because real talk, you go off to college, any of us, you come back home before 4 years in a degree, people looking at you like you failed. Okay.
Yes.
And I just want, if you don't mind, just talking a little bit about that, like sometimes how we have to pivot, and sometimes how we have to kind of go back to move forward. So if you don't mind talking about some of the challenges in that.
Think like when I really think back to that time and having to come home, it kind of was like, you know, like, oh my gosh, you know, especially like, you know, haters gonna hate. So it's kind of like one of those things. And I did, before I left, like I worked at CVS. So I was fortunate to be able to go back to my job at CVS. Like I was able to get a job right away and start working. And within that time at CVS, I wasn't just like a cashier, like they moved me to like shift supervisor. So, you know, wherever I am, I tend to like have, I guess, leadership qualities. When I think about it now, like they kind of push me forward. But like, as far as, you know, I guess I've always been really confident. So like what people say to me, I'm kind of like, okay, like, and I might overthink things slightly sometimes, but it wasn't, I'm always that one, I'm going to show you. Like it's always going to be like, look at me now. Like I may be down, but I'm still going to survive and I'll be all right. It might take me a little bit longer. Like when you're in it, it feels like heavy, but like, like it feels like, like, oh my gosh, like, oh my gosh, I'm such a bum. And I'm like, what am I going to do with my life? And really, honestly, though, with that time off, like I was just working and I didn't really like apply to other colleges like right away. Like I was working. But then I realized to myself, I was like, I'm really good at looking to the future and saying, do I see myself working as a shift supervisor at CVS for the rest of my life? And then I was like, you know what? And then being at home, once you got a little bit of taste of being away in college, and then you have
it's hard to go back.
Like, listen, so I was like, I'm going to have to make some like decisions. So that's when I applied. I applied to Monmouth and I applied to St. Peter's where my sister went.
Okay.
So I went to St. Peter's, but the crazy thing about, like I said, I just make decisions. And when I was doing reflecting, I was like, why did I just was like, you know what? They didn't have a mass media or a communications major at St. Peter's. I got accepted there. So I was like, you know what? I'm just going to change my major. So I changed my major to education. And initially it was secondary education and history.
Oh, wow. Wow.
Right. So that was my major when I went to St. Peter's.
So
go ahead.
I'm sorry. Just 1 second, because I want to kind of package this. You leave Hampton, okay, where you experience homecoming, you experience Hampton, right? Say no more. And you come back home.
Yes.
And you're working at CVS. And then it sounds like you just start doing some like future setting, like, all right, let me look into my future. Is this where I want to be? And it's funny because when we work with young people, like that is probably one of the most powerful questions. Is like, where do you see yourself? Where do you want to be? And then what do you have to do to get to those things? Like that's one of, in all education, in all, when you look at education, when you look at development, a big part of it is future self. Like if you can see future self and you can identify future self, that leads to a lot. And I don't like to use the word accomplishment, but growth, because it's like you have that vision. So you hit a moment, you have that vision. I need to ask you, Carrie, is it an actual moment that you have that says, is this what you want to do with your life? Is this what you want to do for the rest of your life? And it's not, I'm not sitting here saying there's anything wrong with being a cashier or a shift manager.
No, there's not.
Because it's not, but it may not be something that you want, like, so my question is, did something happen? Was it an event? Or was it just kind of like, you know what? I want to get back into school because I was in school.
I think, if I have to be honest, I think it was more probably like my mom, like she was just getting annoying, like, and she was just on me. And then she was just talking to, and I'm like, you know what, and I was like, I'm so over this, I'm gonna, it was probably like if I could think back, like, like I was gonna have to start paying some money in the house, like contribute towards the bills, something like that. And I was like, I'm gonna get back to school because I can't live with my mom forever. Like, so it was kind of like one of those things, it was constantly me and her. It would never be like my sister or my brother. Like I was always the more outspoken one, as I am now. And, I think we do better living apart from each other rather than we are together, like kind of thing. So that's what I think really propelled me into like, I need to get back into school and to to do this. And
It's good. So it wasn't comfortable. Like it
no,
wasn't, yeah, it wasn't comfortable. It wasn't comfortable. And I want to hit that Jersey City story. Parent Donzel. Oh, it seemed like a reunion up here, AP, man.
listen, so I said, listen, I'm gonna be on this podcast. I need some support.
As usual, Asbury coming out to support. So you come up, you up at Kennedy Boulevard, St.
Yes.
Peter's.
Yes.
So you go there, and then that's when you saying education and then your history. So is that the major that you stick with?
No. No, it's
so
not.
You bounce around again.
So, I mean, I stuck with it for a couple of years. So really what happened, like my story with what happened with that, like I really wanted to be a history teacher. Like I have a passion for history. Okay. Like I enjoy it. I love it. I will watch the History Channel for hours, like that's just kind of like my thing. But what kind of started happening was like these courses at St. Peter's were getting really like narrow, like with the Irish immigrants during the potato famine. Like I don't need a whole semester on that. It was like stuff like that, and I was like, this is not for me. Like this is really boring, and I don't really want to do this. So I switched my major probably like June, like my junior year, and to elementary education.
Okay.
Because most of the core classes were kind of the same. So it wasn't like, like I had to take like extra courses in order to switch this over. So I switched to elementary education. And then no longer did I have the double major for history. I switched it to, which sounds crazy right now, but American Studies. Because I was being smart. My chairperson of the education department was also the chair of the American Studies. So he was like, listen, Carrie, this is what you do. Because I had all the history courses that were like American history, blah, American. So anything that had American in it, I could just take. So, I could take, like I took Black American theology because, I was at St. Peter's, you had to take a theology class because it was Jesuit. So like things like that, American short story. So, that's more like, I like a buffet, like I need to like, let me have that education buffet so I can kind of choose what I want to choose.
True.
And it kind of like was that kind of cool kind of double major that I can kind of just pick and choose what I wanted in order to make that as my double major. So that's when I switched into elementary education.
And you stuck there.
And I stuck there. I did.
You stick with elementary education.
Yes.
You go down to, now from there, all right, you graduate St. Peter's.
Yes.
Finish. Do you do student teaching or?
So, yes. So this is our Long Branch connection.
Okay.
I did my sophomore field experience with Al Freeman.
Okay.
Shout out to
Mr.
Al.
Freeman. Yes.
I did because he grew up with my husband. Wow. So that's my connection. So I did my sophomore field experience with Al at West End School. And then I did my student teaching with Miss Intra Bartolo at West End School.
So how in the hell did we let you get out of Long Branch?
So see, this is what had happened. So when I did my student teaching, I went to a job fair before I did my student teaching, and they were hiring in Jersey City. I went to a job fair. Like, and me, like stupid, naive, I didn't even understand what a job fair was. Like, to me, I was thinking of it like a college fair. Like you just go around and see like who's hiring. Like, I wasn't even dressed appropriately. Like, I remember
like for an interview. For
an interview. I didn't even understand what that meant. So I went up there with like, I had like a sweater and like some khakis on. Like, I was really like super cash. Like, I didn't have like jeans on, but literally, they were doing interviews on the spot. So I went to this job fair and I had like 3 different interviews for different schools in Jersey City, and I was hired, making way more up there than I would have been in Monmouth County. So I was like, I was like, okay, I'll do a little commuting. Whatever, like I'll do it. So when I started my student teaching, I had already had like I was I had already kind of went to that job fair, like, so for the next like school year, as soon as I graduated, I already had a
You were
job.
set. You were
Yeah,
set.
I already had a job. So
So you started in Jersey City?
yeah.
Wow. What
So
school? Were you public or private?
public. So I was at PS number 9, which was Kennedy School. It's not open anymore. It's next to
Okay.
Ferris High School, right
Yes.
off of the Turnpike,
Yes.
14C Grand Street exit. So I did 2 years at Jersey City, and it's funny, my kids now have kids, and they're like, so like if anyone's tuning in, like shout out to my kids from PS number 9, like, you know, so that was where I started
Wow.
in Jersey City.
Chilltown. Shout out to Jersey City. I went to State. I went to Jersey City State. So I'm familiar. All those names you throwing out there, I definitely know. I didn't realize that you started off there. So you got
Yes.
all the way away.
Yeah.
You got all the way away. So you do 2 years there in
2
Jersey
years.
City.
And
ahead.
what moved me, so me being me, you know, like when I got married, like, so 2000 was a big year for me because, you know, it took me I was out a year, so I didn't graduate until 2000. So 2000, I got married. I got my first, you know, teaching job. I had a baby.
Wow.
So,
Wow.
you know, Chloe, you know, was born in 2000. So I stayed there for 2 years, but this is kind of where it started. Like I was always good with discipline, which is a good thing. And then sometimes it's a bad thing. So when other teachers can't handle their classrooms, what happens the following year? They move you. I started in 5th grade with my kids, and I taught like it wasn't called gifted, but it was called PO. It was like Project of Excellence. So it was basically kind of like a gifted class that started together since kindergarten.
Okay.
So I looped with my kids from 5th to 6th grade.
Gotcha.
So the building was pre-K to 8. So needless to say, like the top floor was like rocking and rolling because it was like the middle school, like all day. Like it was just rocking and rolling all day long. But the principal wanted to move me to the 8th grade. And I was like, all right, so I'm good, but I'm not that good. Like, no, thank you. And so that's where she was going to move me. And I wanted to move lower and she wouldn't. So I put my notice in.
So you just like, I'm bouncing. I'm out.
Yep.
Did you have a job to put your notice in? Or you
No. No, I did not. I sent it certified mail to make sure that she got it.
So you knew what you wanted and you weren't going to be told otherwise. So you bet on yourself.
Yes.
Put your notice
and then got nervous because I didn't have a job.
What month did you put your notice? Because let's talk educator.
So I was smart enough because, you know, I was unionized enough to know that, you know, I put my notice in. It was like towards the end of the year. So it wasn't like, you know, it was, you know, so I wasn't losing a check. I wasn't just like, you know, I'm out, and leave the kids. No, I finished it out. I did feel really, really bad because I loved my kids and I wanted to see them through to like for graduation. I just knew then what I could and could not handle. In 8th grade, which I probably would have been fine, but I was not going to suffer through that.
Yeah.
So, you know, I worked, you know, until June and until the end of the school year. And then I started putting my, as soon as I knew, I started, you know, hitting everything. Now, this is when I learned that education is not as easy as going to a job fair and getting hired. It's a very political thing, and especially in Monmouth County.
That's what I was about to say, because you had it easy. You show up with some sweatpants on, you know what I'm saying? Like I got a job for making $40,000 right now. You know, like, let's talk about what you just said, because you just said education is not easy, even at a teacher level. Forget about leadership. Okay. At a teacher level, how hard it is and how difficult it is to crack into education, and like you said, especially in Monmouth County. So talk about that, your experiences with that.
Right. So, you know, I told super confident. I'm confident I'm going to get me a job. So I did fan out, and I did have a couple of interviews. I had interviews in Tinton Falls where I was like one of 1,000 applicants and made it down to one of 3.
Final.
I did 3 interviews, made it to the superintendent.
And didn't get it.
And they didn't hire me, which I really do believe it was Ines Hennessy, my mom, who was the rebel rouser at the board meeting. As soon as they saw Hennessy, they were like, "Oh,
we good. We good."
So, even though I went through the school system, my teachers, who were still there from when because I subbed. I didn't say that I did substitute.
Before,
and I subbed in Tinton Falls before I started teaching. So, I thought for sure because the principal liked me, it was just a fit. You know how it just felt good.
Yeah, you went there,
Yeah, wow. And I was he was like, and this is what we're gonna do. I was like, oh my God, I got this. I went home, so I was like, Dawn, I got this. Yo, it was wonk, wonk, wonk. It was like, nope, not hired. So then I was like, oh my gosh, because really I was looking to kind of get away from districts like Jersey City because I was burnt out in 2 years. I was tired.
There's high fatigue in those positions.
I was really, exhausted.
Yes.
And I was like, I don't know if education is for me. I really at that point was starting to kind of second guess, what else can I do? Because I'm not sure about this. But now I'm married, I've got bills, I've got a kid. What is the smart thing to do? Not the quick thing, me just not really thinking about what I'm doing. And how I got into Asbury was my sister's friend, Karma Williams David. Shout out to Karma.
Definitely shout out to Karma.
Knew that I was looking for a position, and she hand delivered in August. Now, this wasn't even the beginning of August. This was mid-August. She hand delivered my resume because they were hiring at Bradley, and at that time it was Bangs Avenue.
Yep.
So I interviewed at Bradley and at Bangs Avenue, and I end up, choosing Bradley to go to. So that was 2002. So I've been in Asbury since then.
Wow. So before we definitely got to spend some time, about your experiences in Asbury. I want to spend some time there. But before we go there, I just want to go back to something you said because it's so important. You talked about, sometimes we work in these high stress environments, and there's a lot of pressure, to be at your 1,000% best every single day for children, especially when we're in areas, whether it's high poverty, school districts where students are under great stress, great anxiety, whether that's due to social economic, whether that's just due to the social atmosphere that young people are growing up in all of the things that poverty brings, right? And sometimes, and I know this as a leader myself, we tend to lean on those strong educators and we want to put them in spaces, obviously, where they can make the greatest impact. But what we fail to do is, and I was having a conversation with a good friend of mine today, we fail to check on them. We fail to check in. We fail to make sure they are okay. And they're not being burnt out. Because when you said that, I thought about that. I just thought about that. And that's something for leaders. I always try to have little gems and jewels because, you got to check on your people because the people that you're relying on to put in that work, who we know, like you said, I had good classroom management, kids respected me. There was relationship. There was a rapport. So ideally, the principal going to be like, or the leader's going to say, listen, we got to get her in a place with the highest need,
right?
But then we also got to make sure Carrie's okay.
Carrie wasn't okay a lot. And so it did not change once I got to Asbury. They're like, oh my gosh, we gonna put her. So, so it didn't change.
Yeah.
So,
Where'd you go first in Asbury?
I was at Bradley.
All right.
So I started off at 5th grade. And at that point we were in trailers. We weren't in the school, when you were there, where the playground were trailers.
Those were trailers? Wow.
Right. So there were 2 sets of trailers. There were the ones, as we recall, they were basically like the gardens, I think. And then there was like the other ones that were like Beverly Hills. Like I was not in the Beverly Hills trailers. I was like in the bowling alley ones where it would leak the window in. But, you know, I was just happy to have a job and I was happy to be there. So that's where I started out in fifth grade.
In fifth grade. But see, when I was there, you were at Bradley, right? When I was there, you were, now I don't know if you did up until 2002, if you were there until the time I got there was like maybe 11 or 12.
Right. So
did you move around or were you?
Yes.
Okay.
So mostly I think it was like 6 years. I went from fifth grade. I stayed at fifth grade for a year and then I moved to third grade. I was there for 3 years. And then because I really wanted to get to kindergarten. Okay. Like I knew I was like,
you've been on that journey to kindergarten for a long
time. Right. Like I was really, because I knew that I would love every single minute of it. I knew like I would. So, and I was good, you know, teaching the upper grades. I was good, but I really knew like in my heart that that's really, so I spent time in third grade. And then finally, I did go to kindergarten and I did love every single minute of it. Like I loved it. So, but then some movements happened, and then I was transferred to Bangs Avenue, which is now Barack Obama. So I was at Bangs for a couple of years, and then, as you know, there's a lot of rifts that happen.
Yes.
Yeah. So with that, like, you know, like it was like coming, going, like, you know, I would be like, I wasn't getting the job back then. I got the job back right beforehand.
Stressful.
Right.
Yeah,
so,
stressful.
You know, and then they closed the school down. So like Obama, you know, like with the restructuring.
Okay, yes.
They closed it down. Carrie gets shipped to preschool. So that's when you came.
Wow.
and I was like, and I was okay with going, you know, like preschool. I mean, there's some political stuff that happened that I won't discuss, but you know, like I just wanted to make sure if I went to preschool, those politics, I wasn't going to be impacted by that and punished, basically.
Yes.
So you know, I always looked at, like I always say, I did a bid in preschool, you know, because it really should have been a lot of fun. And, you know, like when I was in it, I didn't enjoy it at all. I really, really did not. And then I end up, I got pregnant with my last, my third child. And so I was out on a maternity leave. And when they came back, that's when you met me and I was on a cart.
Yes, because that's what I remember.
Rescue me. And I was like, please rescue me. Please.
I remember that.
Please. Because I'm like, I've got a whole master's and I am sitting here pushing this cart, delivering lunch and covering preps.
That was the conversation we had.
And I was good for the first 2 weeks. When I came back, I was like, I don't got to do lesson plans. I don't have to, you know, like do this and that. And then I was like, and then I got like into it. I was like, this is for the birds. I'm like, I can't. Like, so, you know, so I did spend some time in preschool. But, you know, looking back, I learned some things in preschool that made me who I was, you know, like transformed me in a way when I got into the tech world. And then I end up going to fourth grade after I got out of preschool. And then that's when I became a tech coach.
But how did, like, first of all, you know, you're talking about, and that's what I love about hearing stories, because sometimes people, like, they see where you're at and they think that it's like this straight line to get there. Like, oh, this is all you got to do. You know what I'm saying? Like, we oversimplify things. Like, because think about it. As educators, we say, go to college, get a job. Like, we just oversimplify all of those things that happen in between those 2 points. So I'm happy that you're sharing all of this.
Right.
You know?
It was not easy. And as you know, and, you know, I'm about the real talk. You know, it gets me in trouble sometimes, but, you know, like, let's just call it what it is. A lot of times, like, opportunities were not necessarily, like, I was a good teacher, but sometimes because I wasn't in with the crew, like I wasn't in a sorority, you know, I wasn't in, you know, like I wasn't in some of these organizations. So, you know, I wasn't looked at the same. And so some of those opportunities weren't given to me, you know, like my voice was not necessarily heard with a lot of
Yes.
things. And also, like, when I've always been a creative person, so my teaching style has always kind of been outside the box, you know, and how I can transform this instruction to not just be surface teaching, going from page 1 to page 355. It's like, how can we spin this, and how can we like create for you to show me that you know what the lesson is. So that got me in trouble, believe it or not.
Wow.
It did. Because people like, she's over here and she's doing that, and people like running and telling and stuff like that.
Like, that's
and
not following the curriculum. That's not
right.
Like,
and I'm like, it is the curriculum.
Yeah.
It is, you know, so it's like that, like I had to fight all my life, you know, it feels like kind of like this constant, you know, struggle. I put it on myself, but I can sleep at night because I've done these things. So because of that, now, when you say like, how did this like text coach thing in one of those rifts happen? I was not hired back. Like, I really didn't think I was coming back. So I was like, I started sending resumes out, but what sets me apart from everyone else? I'm an elementary school teacher. That's what's on my cert. How many other elementary school teachers are there? You know, I'm not at that point, I wasn't highly qualified in anything else.
True.
And so that's when I went back and I got my master's at NJCU through the Communiversity for educational technology.
So what year was that, Carrie?
So that was, so Haley was born in 2012. So that was 2010.
Wow.
I was still at Bangs Avenue, and I started then, and then I finished like when I was in preschool.
So 2010. You start ed tech. And what, like, I'm thinking back to 2010, and I'm thinking, I mean, in terms of social media, you know, in terms like how much has come after that, in terms of there was no hashtag for ed tech. Like, what was it? Like, what drew you to that? Like, how did that happen?
So it's crazy because, you know, like, I do things to kind of set myself apart from everyone else. When I was like, you know what, I was like, I'm going to have to go back to school in order to, you know, make myself stand out a little bit. So when I looked into, like, I really assessed to see what everyone else had. Like, so everyone in the they have their reading specialists, their guidance counselors, you know, they had their masters in leadership at that
administration,
point. And I was like, what could I do? And then I started looking, I was like, I don't really want, you know, because at that point I had this was before Haley. So I had two kids, and I'm like, what can I do that stays close? And, you know, my husband commutes. So, you know, I need to be close. And I saw through New Jersey State University, through the Communiversity in Brookdale, an educational technology master's. I was not necessarily good at technology. I just was like, you know what? I've never heard of anyone who's had this master.
I was going to say, yes.
And I said, you know what? I went to an information session, and I was like, you know what? Sign me up. Now, once I got into the class, like, I kind of was like, I had like a little mini breakdown inside. Like, what did I get myself into? But let me tell you, it changed my way that I looked at education, because at that point, honestly, like I said, throughout the years, constantly having classes with all the kids with discipline problems, I was burnt out, I was exhausted, and I really was looking to leave. So it really did renew my passion back into education, and be able to, like, I could use these tools to help students learn in a different way.
Wow.
So that's really how I started that journey.
Damn. Like, I'm blown away, because that was a big risk. Because it's almost like buying a stock when it's pennies. You know, that's what you did. You bought a stock and you invested obviously in yourself, but that was before like anybody knew ed tech was going to blow like where it has, to where today, let's be real, in the last year, even if you weren't down with it, like, you had to get down. It was like, down or lay down, like the last year.
Head coach season for real. It's like, inside season, we're finally here. They need was.
Yes.
It was.
Yes. Yes. And I'm like, and it's crazy because I think about, I think about you, I think about Regina, I think about Sarah, and I'm like, yo, y'all were so ahead of the game. Y'all were seeing the game before the game was the game. And when you're sitting in that class, what's hitting you that's like, all right, this is something different, or I can really I can turn this into something crazy. Like what's like what's that like?
So, initially of not being like, I always put the disclaimer. I am an ed tech person.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not IT. Like, and I don't claim that. That's my
Okay.
husband. Those are the
Okay.
IT people. I can do some simple troubleshooting. I will not know, like, I will say that cord into that thingy, like I am that girl. Like, so I never claim to be that girl, but what I do great in is I'm able to use that tool. Like, I will think of the strategy and like, you know what? That tool will really fit well into that. And I'm really good at remixing things. So
Okay.
I'm good at, like, I can see, like, when I was in these classes, I was like, oh shoot, like I really could take that back. And this could be that, like, where I wanted to start, like, because we had fluency problems with students, like, you know what? Like, I can use this like a karaoke machine to be able to have kids sing, but they're also getting the fluency because they're reading the words, like, like stuff like that. Like, my mind is a little crazy sometimes, and I'm constantly thinking. And my principals, shout out to Edwin Ruiz, who was like, I was like, oh my God, I was thinking, and he'd be like, oh my God, here we go. Like, I was thinking, and it was just kind of like, like, and because I'm constant, like, the wheels are kind of like constantly turning, like, how can we get these kids? Because I know that they can do it. How can we present this to them in a way that will help them get where they need to be? So,
and that is what, that's it. That's the transformative power of teaching. And it sounds like it was one of those things, like, you were like, I'm gonna figure that out, like that. And it's funny because you just mentioned, Ruiz, and I'm like, I remember seeing you down, I think it was Texpo.
Yes.
And you tell it now, you telling this story and of me, going back to the time at the cart, like, save me. And then I see you down at Texpo with, at the time, I think it was Ruiz, and it was a few other folks from Asbury, and I don't even know y'all name. I think y'all were presenting. Was it Sancho? Yeah, like, y'all were presenting down there.
Yes.
And like that, like, those are the things that movies are created of. Like, like, all right,
I need my own movie?
Listen, we need a movie. Like, if Disney's watching, because real talk though, Sancho, because I'm saying Sancho now, but real talk, Carrie, seeing, like, I remember that time at the car. I remember, like, you said, when you said that, I said, wow, remember that. And
because you were like running away from me with the backpack
I was like,
on, and I was like, no, don't leave me. I need you to rescue me, please.
I was like, yo, all right, but really, I do recall that, and then I do recall, and it just hit me when I was down in Tech. It wasn't too long ago. That was like maybe that may have been like 3 or 4 years ago. I was at Texpo, and I ran into y'all, and I'm like, wow. Now when you tell this story, and now you're making it happen, and your role right now, if you could just describe, what you're doing right now in terms of, ed tech coaching.
So, I was a tech coach this is my 6th year. So I was at Bradley, which is pre-K to 5. And literally each day is a struggle. So like I said, like, tech coaches are there for a reason. Now, I put myself, because I'm never like anyone else. I'm Carrie. There's like no way that you can kind of contain me. Like, I'm like in a box. Like, I'm just a lot of things. So, the first thing though I am is an instructional coach. Like, instruction and curriculum, I know it. So, that was like the first step of really getting people to move from, like, I'm using technology, but, you're using the computer to project your lessons.
Yes.
So how can we move that
Yes.
for you to
Yes.
use the tools to help you ramp up your lessons and help you get to your learning outcomes, being intentional about
Yes.
what we're doing. So listen, it was a struggle. I'm not gonna lie. I'm like, do you need some help? Like, do you need some help? Like, I can help you. Do you need some help? So I did a lot of that, like in the first like kind of couple of years. But really what really kind of like streamlined what I was doing was Miss Gray. So shout out to Miss Gray, because, I talked about like for the first time in a long time, like once I had this platform, they really allowed me to be able to just do me and just kind of let me like, not completely run, but like just go
freedom.
with it.
Yes.
Like I was
freedom.
able to kind of like, do these things. And shout out to Miss Jackson, because, they kind of just were like, all right, Carrie, just do your thing. Because some of them didn't know what I was talking about.
They
but
weren't,
I knew
they weren't.
Right. They didn't know what I was talking about. But like, like they really let me do. And, Miss Gray kind of gave me this charge of like, all right, Carrie, so I want to transform tech coaches, and I really want to do this. Like, can you come up with like what you see the job as?
The vision, yes.
So I'm like,
yes.
Word? Like,
yes.
do you really want me to do this? Because I'll do it. So it kind of is like this joke between us, like kind of like if you watch the movie Jerry Maguire. And how like he created like this, he was like his memo, like it was like this mission statement. So it kind of created this thing of what I saw the tech coach, like what it was and what it really should be. And that kind of transformed what, at least in my building, what we kind of proceeded on.
Wow.
And that's how, like, I presented that at ISTE when we were in San Antonio, like just kind of like that story and that journey
of how to
like really like focusing like during our common plannings are like, okay, so here's your instruction. Like, what is it that you're trying to do? Let's look at it. And like, here's some tools that you can put in your digital toolkit that'll help you get to where you need to be. So just like kind of building capacity, training people up. The buy-in was like, listen, the gas spaces that I used to get, but like I like will just, I will smile and just, okay, so this is what we're gonna do. So, I just kind of like railroad myself in
through
it. And just like, we're gonna do this, but guess what here? Like, here's what's different. I will get in there with you. We can do this together. You don't have to do this alone. It's not going to be one of those like drive-by trainings where here's the stuff, now figure it out. Like, if you want, I will get in there and do that for you. So that's kind of, it took me 5 years to get teachers to that. And then once the pandemic happened, I have never been so tired in my life.
I know y'all going through it.
But the good thing at Bradley, like I had already started.
Set it up. Yes.
We didn't have Google Classroom, like, and because I don't really like the word no, I will find out and come like a different like iteration of like, well, we can use this to really do this, this, and this. And then we were departmentalized. I'm like, this could be great if we use this, this, and this. But like, let's just start with the ELA teachers. So that's kind of like 4 years ago, we had started using piloting Google Classroom in Bradley Elementary with the ELA teachers. Before, other school districts, it was new to us. Like some other districts were doing it, but no one else was doing it in the district.
It wasn't a norm. It wasn't a norm like
right.
It is.
So it's like, we can use this, and this could really help teachers be consistent and kind of like streamline their workflow. So like, it was kind of like that kind of thing. So, using those tools to be able to get teachers just resources and just all those kind of things. And it kind of like, grew into this nutshell. And then that's when like kind of the whole STEAM makerspace kind of like thing happened.
And you have,
in our building.
But in that's STEAM, and I know that I want to talk a little bit about that. So but I want to go back because I think it's important. you talked about, like, first of all, you go off to Communiversity for the degree, the master's, right?
Mhm.
And that was 2010, you said? That's when you around the
So
time?
so I graduated 2012.
Okay, so you did that around there. You have so you just at that point you are working, you're doing your thing, you're putting time in, you're learning that whole, like, you're just learning that.
Yes.
When does Mrs. Gray, Sancha Gray, shout out to Sancha, Superintendent Asbury Park, when does she come to you? If you have to say a year, when does she come to you and say, what's the vision for this? Because I want to show, I want listeners and viewers to hear something. Like, what year is that?
Right. Right. And at that point, like, Rapolette was still,
He was still,
shout out
okay.
to Dr. Rapolette, because, he was
Definitely.
the kind of, like, I think we used to call him Captain Digital, or he used to call himself. So we had this kind of, like, like, crew, and, like, but I wanted, like, she wasn't superintendent then, like, she was director of curriculum, but
okay.
I want to say this had to be like maybe 2017.
Okay, stop right there. Stop right there, Carrie. 2017.
Yeah.
But this is the message. 2010, you start a program of, it's like, all right, it's ed tech. It's different. It's not administration. It's not. I'm gonna try this. And not too many people were like going crazy over that. Some people may have been saying, don't go for that. Okay.
Oh no, I had people telling me not to do it.
Don't do that.
Yeah.
Go for administration. But
right.
You do it. And not only do you do it, you graduate, you obviously stay connected to the work. You're around, you connect yourself to folks who are doing that work. And then in 17, you get asked about the vision. And I'm saying that because at that point, you have to be, like I tell my kids, stay ready so you don't have to be ready. Because when you're asked that question, you got to be ready. Like, what will be your vision? And I think that that's important. I don't want to run by that, because there was all of that time in between.
Right. So like, really, even, and I think I kind of glazed over, like, I had this master's, but there weren't really opportunities in the school district. So there was one tech coach for the elementary schools, one for middle school, and one for high school.
Yes.
So then they opened up, they took away the science lab classroom teacher, and they opened up to have a tech coach in each elementary school. And I was like,
uh-oh, yeah.
Because they did have, when Miss Thomas Robinson was the tech coach at the middle school and she retired, they opened that position mid-year. And I was like, I've got the degree. I can do that. Yeah. Do I really want to be at the middle school? No, but that's an opportunity. So, I applied for it and didn't get an interview at all. And I was like, but I have all of this stuff. So, but then, see, things happen for a reason. And I have to, like, I trust in patience, even though it's hard, is that these positions opened up. And that's when I interviewed and got the job. And so we were in a meeting, and it wasn't even in a round, like, after the meeting, like, Miss Gray came up to me. It was more like I'm sitting and she's standing next to me talking to me. Like, and just kind of like it's me and her just talking. And I was like, okay, like, I can do that. Like, when do you want it? Like, because I'm a girl who needs deadlines. Give me a deadline and I'll have it, for you. So that's kind of like how, like, just kind of like
popped off.
It kind of like, it popped. And then, like, I'm a checklist girl. Like, I need a framework to kind of just inform my work, or it'll be just kind of loosey-goosey. And, like, we created this technology framework, and we kind of rolled it out and had, like, action steps and like each semester marking period. Like, I do a little too much sometimes. So sometimes I have to rein myself in because I do too much. Like, I really do. And I have to, like, one of the consultants brought me in a no, like, button. I don't have a problem with telling other people no. But I have a problem sometimes telling myself no.
Yes.
Because I do too much. Because I'm excited. I'm excited. So I tend to do a lot of things, and then I get exhausted.
And that's when that burnout comes. But it's you got so many gems, man. This story is like crazy. And and leaders, it's something that you need to learn about. Well, let's just pause, right? What you just talked about with you and Sancha, Mrs. Gray, she comes to you after a meeting. So much happens in the meetings after the meeting.
Right.
That's like
are like it's where magic happens a lot
it
of times.
is. And it's funny, Carrie, because I always tell teachers that relationship building comes in the margins. It doesn't happen when you're lecturing. It happens after class. You have a conversation with a student. Before a class, a student comes up to you and you just, chit chat. You're at a basketball game and you talk. Like that's where the magic happens. And that's why when you just said that, I said, see, there it is in the margins again. And good leaders, they listen and they see. And there must have been something that Sanchez saw and was like, all right, let me go talk to Carrie and then from there, it's like, yo, you said, oh my God, I got you when you want it. And then something sparks in your head that just takes it you just go to a whole different level. And you start talking about framework. Now you're creating frameworks. Like, think about that.
Because it's like how my brain works. Like I need like certain things in front of me in order for me to check me and to really like do it, like say, to keep myself accountable of what I'm supposed to be doing. But here I'm having you be accountable too, because this is what we're going to be working on. And then it's like, do we need to adjust these timelines because this and this happened and we weren't able to get to that goal. So it's always, big and we might have to like adjust.
Yes.
But, that's kind of like how I kind of just envision like how I work and how I work well.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
We are. I mean, I can't believe we've been going for an hour and 20 minutes.
I know.
Like,
I looked at the time. I was like, wow. And I was like, we didn't even like get to the like just like.
And that's what I'm like. Wow, we haven't. So what I would like to do is, if it's okay, take a couple of minutes to talk about at least the STEAM Lab. How that came about. If you could talk a little bit about that, that would be great.
So it was another conversation between Mr. Ruiz and myself, and what was traditional in the district was they had these after school like test prep academies for state testing. And he was like, I really don't really want to do that. And I was just starting to like my thirst for knowledge is always like, I stay thirsty. Like, I'm like, oh, like, and then I'm like, so I kind of like started getting into like, attending different things with STEAM and all these kind of different things. And then, I hooked up with Regina. Shout out to Regina because, she was the best. Like I always joke about Regina, like she used to kind of stalk me at different things. And I would be like, this girl is like a little crazy. So,
yes.
Like, and I was like, yeah, like, but you know what? It was the best friendship that I could have started because like we're, like she like really like, pushed me into certain things that I probably wouldn't have
never have
even
done.
Like, right. Like I wouldn't have even like thought to even do. So like, shout out to Regina for always like kind of like, I think we keep each other like grounded, and we make sure that did you know about and do you know about, and like we work together and always kind of push each other up, which is hard sometimes as women.
Yes. True.
So,
but can I give a shout before you get onto that? Shout out to Regina Schaefer, okay, who also has Asbury Park roots. All right.
Yes.
So like shout out. And what you just said, Carrie, when I first started teaching, Regina was like, listen, she was schooling me because I was like into teaching. I was alternate route. I didn't know what I was doing, and she schooled me. And to this day, I'll get texts every once in a while. Did you see this, Alfred? Did you see this? Did you see this? Did you see that?
Right.
So when you said
that,
sure
that you're in the know. Most definitely.
Yes. Get your kids in this. Get your kids in that. And one thing I need, Carrie, what I want you to do, and we're going to continue with the STEAM Lab thing, but when you talk to Regina or see Regina, She needs to get on the show. I've been trying to get her on the show.
You know, she is
I know,
so like
but
low key.
yo, I want her on. Like, just say, yo, you need to get on the show. That's all you got to say. And I'm gonna keep working on her too, but I just need your help too.
I got you. I will try.
All right.
You know, she's a stubborn.
I know, but I'm getting her. Like, she getting on here. I'm just saying it. Like, it's happening. It's happening. So go ahead, continue with the Steve.
So basically, that's how it happened. So he was like, I want to do something different. So it was a similar thing. I'm like, I got some ideas, and literally, we had a conversation. We wrote up the proposal to get it approved, by the board. And then when they needed the coordinator for the program, I interviewed. So again, I brought a manifesto of what I thought that it could look like. And like, even to the point where I drew layout of what I saw the space to look like. Like I had shapes, and I did it in like Word, and like I drew it all out. So I was like, this is what I see. Like, this is what I think could happen. And basically how we kind of did it was, we were the first in the district to do it. And it basically was created. The first year we did like project-based learning. So it was like themes. Yeah. So we really focused on like integrating different topics. Like we did STEAM, like nutrition, like we did like engineering, we did all this stuff, but it was like together, and it was a lot of like too close and too like, like if we were really trying to do it. And then the following year I was like, I think I have a better idea. And that's when we started doing academies. So it was like STEAM Academy, and we did forensic, we did, coding, we did the makerspace. So we had all these little academies, and the kids rotated through it. Now with that program, it was like the kids were being exposed to all these different things, because that to me is the whole point of like, can we get a seat at the table?
True.
Exposing our kids to things that they wouldn't have. Like normally, like in other districts, they're doing these things. We're not doing these things. So exposing them to these, and even like potentially get a passion for the things that they're doing to have a future career.
Yes.
Right. So that's always, to me, like I'm always looking at like the big idea, like the big vision of like where I see that they could be. So that kind of was like the goal of like integrating all of this together. And from this, the summer school was based on the program that I created. And then now the after school programs continue. Now I've left those programs just because I needed, some time to just kind of like, like chill.
Yeah.
I mean, but I really truly never chill, because I did go back. I got another master's.
Hold on, what's this master's in, Carrie? What
so I did get, because now like I'm in all these spaces, and like I want to be like, I want like some like what really pushed me into this is because I want to be able to make some decisions. Like I'm in a space where I'm a coach, my voice is heard, but I'm not necessarily a decision maker.
Yes.
So that's kind of like what kind of just changed. So this one is in administration. So I finished that in 2019. So because in order for me to move up, I didn't have that.
Yes.
So,
but what you just said is important, because the policy making, the decision making, which is really policy making, like how did you get to a point where you're leveraging and influencing policy and decisions that are made not only at a school, but maybe this is the plan for the district.
Right.
And you have to have a seat at that table in order to start those conversations. And what I'll say is, what better person to have sitting at a table who has the diverse experiences that you have, the experiences of starting something at Hampton, and wow, challenge came, financial challenge, I gotta go back. You go to CVS. You don't only go there, but you do your thing in the cashier, but then before you know, you're a shift manager. But you don't settle for that. All right, I gotta go deeper. I gotta do more. I want to get back to school. Plus, I don't like, I can't be home. So you go on and you're like, all right, you go to St. Peter's, you do your thing. You start off, like, all right, history, then that changes. Then you hit off into education. And then you start off, you're in Jersey City, you're doing your thing, experiencing great relationships there, doing great things there, and then you end up in Asbury Park, but not easily. You got to go through, like, you got to make it to that space. And then you're like, Rift. Come on. Like, and I'm saying all this because these are the fabrics that we need at tables making decisions, because you get it. And you get Rift, and it's like, yo, what, and you recreate yourself. All right. Then you come back. You see me, you're on a cart. You're like, save me. All the way to where you hit it to where you're asked what your vision is for tech coaches. And that's like mind blowing, and then in the midst of that, obviously you're doing your thing as a wife, as a mom. And then you go, like, it's like we need women like you at tables making decisions that are influencing our profession, and I think that's why I'm like, yo, we went over an hour, but we needed to, because we couldn't, if we would have stopped a half hour ago, Carrie, think about it though. We would have been in limbo, like, and people needed to hear this part, about, your rise in what you've done, and what you're passionate about. And I'm like that, like, I'm like, and I didn't know all of this, and I'm like, we know each other, but I'm like, wow, you're just like, it's blowing my mind. And to me, it's just getting started. It's just getting started. Yes. It's just getting started. It really is. What I would like to do, and there's sometimes when we get on here, I'm like, all right, we need a second episode. And you're definitely one, because I feel like, there's another chapter coming for you. All right. I definitely see that. I see another chapter coming. All right. But what I would like to ask you, Carrie, if it's okay, if you can go back and give advice to your high school self. This is something I always ask guests, like, if you can go back to give advice to your high school self, what would that advice be? And why would you give that advice?
High school Carrie was, I don't know. Like, I guess I would have to say to myself, like, I did, because I was super stubborn, very like strong opinionated, kind of no different than I am now. But, I've evolved in a place where, but it took me a long time to get there. Like a little bit of an anger management problem. I'm not gonna lie about that. So I think I would say to, high school Carrie, like, you need to chill out. Like, you really need to, like, take some deep breaths and just, live. I think that's, like, you get caught up in, like, the minutia of, like, everything around you in your life, and everything that kind of happens, just be able to enjoy it and be able to walk away from people who are not there for you. Like, the people who, it's always when you're a smart Black girl, is always kind of a thing, amongst our own people. But, it's like really just kind of like stick to who you are and just, you're going to be all right. You're going to be all right.
Listen, see, you got to stop, because then we start getting into a whole other conversation. But like that piece that you just said, and being okay and confident in who you are and what you are. And then you bring up that smart Black girl. And those are conversations I have with my own daughter, in terms of not letting your spirit be broken. Like, no.
Right. No. And that's what I'm big on right now. It's like, it took me a minute to, like, not allow people to, like, get into your energy. I'm big, and I said my motto this is about protecting my spirit and not allowing people's energy to affect me, because it's important, because I really am intuitive that way. And I take it in, and I'm not one who, like, this is probably the most I've opened up ever, so this was for you. Like, I'm not really like, super like vulnerable and talk about my stuff, because I'm glad that I wasn't on here crying, but like I'm a little bit of a toughie, and at times I suffer in silence. Like, I internalize everything. So, I think it's important, for us to teach on, because I have all girls, I'm a girl mom, like 3 girls, of just, being true to who you are and protecting your spirit. And if someone is not there to help you move forward, then, later, sucker, it's kind of like that.
Yep. And that's, how I would, as a girl dad, that's what I'm preaching. That's what I'm teaching. And, I'm that vulnerability, that's what we wanted. And Carrie, I'm grateful for you coming onto the show and sharing all your story, and I am. A lot of times you watch shows, we listen to podcasts, we listen to shows, and we hear about what folks are doing now. I'm so big into creating history. Not only creating history, but displaying and revealing history. I won't say creating because you created it, but revealing it. Because a lot of times our young people are asking the question, and I think it's funny because I was watching, it was on The Wire. One of the characters, and I forget, it was one of the later seasons. They were in Baltimore Public Schools. It was that season. If you're familiar with The Wire, I forget the character's name, but he was in the school and they had come outside. And it was a rough school in Baltimore. And the young man, there was a plane flying across, and there was his teacher coming out. And I think it was like Mr. Prez or something. He was like, Mr. Prez, how do I get from here to there? And he pointed up at the plane. And that was so powerful, because at the end of the day, what young people are looking to the adults in their lives for, and teachers, parents, community people, coaches, is how do I get from where I'm at to there? And if we don't have those transformers in the middle who are connecting these bridges, our kids are lost. And that's what stories like yours do. They connect. They send a message to young people that life might look like this, look like that, but if you have a vision, and like you said, you did some future setting. If you create a future and say, what do I want my future to say? This is what it can be. These are the things that we can accomplish. So thank you for sharing all that you shared. I'm really thankful.
I appreciate you.
Word. So with that said, thank you all, for joining in. Those of you who have watched, those of you who have commented to the Purpose and Practice podcast here today with Carrie Hennessy Wilson, who is going to continue to do great things. And I think definitely someone who we're going to have to get back onto the show, because there's so much we didn't talk about that we need, that we definitely need to. But I'm so happy that you shared your story, and that vulnerability piece came through. And I really, really appreciate that. So thank you. So to the family out there, the community out there, if you can get into a room, keep your shoulders up high. A room to make differences, keep your shoulders up high. Whatever room you're getting into, keep your shoulders up high, keep your eyes up high. You sit at a table, and you said this, Carrie, you sit at a table, please be a voice for the voiceless. If you're sitting at a table and you have influence, be a voice to the voiceless. Do those things, because those things are only going to further and further and further the progress that we need to make. With that said, we're going to be signing off from the Purpose and Practice podcast. Another great episode with a super Super. We can't wait to round two. Estrada. Wow.
Shout out to Estrada,
Yeah,
my
Estrada,
office
yes.
mate. Her kids are all watching the podcast.
Oh,
thanks, Del.
shout out to another one. Like AP is deep tonight. Definitely Bishops. Go Bishops, like word. But make sure you get into those spaces that we continue to do the things to move forward. And with that said, we'll be back next week. We had 2 great weeks of educators. I can't wait till next week. I'm not going to give away. We'll put it out this weekend who our next guest is. But again, thank you to all you watched, and we will see you next time. Peace out.
It's a 9-chord banger. Dr. Ross dropping knowledge to the masses. Man, you now tuned in to purpose and practice. Purpose and practice. Keep your mental sharp. Learn all the tactics. Dr. Ross dropping knowledge to the masses. Man, you now tuned in to purpose and practice. Purpose and practice. Podcast game. He got it mastered.